Good evening, Wizards. As promised, a nighttime breakdown just to recap on what's been going on in the market for the early phases of the week, what's been going on since yesterday's breakdown, and also throwing in a bit of ether into the mix because we've had a very interesting movement, in particular over the past 24 hours. And overnight, for all of us over here in the UK, we did see some pretty extraordinary movement across the board, not only from XRP, which is obviously a very clear winner for the day ahead when it comes to the top 10. But overall, for altcoins in general, we have seen a pretty phenomenal growth, and it's been very rare to actually see a day like this in many, many days and weeks now, in particular for altcoins when BTC starts lagging behind. This is really starting to give me almost memories of 2017 and even early phases and random phases throughout 2018 where altcoins would just randomly jump ahead of BTC, or likewise BTC would jump but altcoins would drag behind. And it's been very well overdue now to actually see some altcoins gain a bit more steam versus BTC. And the biggest giveaway for me right now on what's really managed to, I guess you could say, tear apart the correlation we've seen over the majority of 2019 is the BTC dominance. Now, this is the first thing that caught my eye when I woke up this morning. So I woke up this morning, went and checked the XRP chart. I saw a nice little breakout higher, and instantly I said to myself, what if the BTC dominance had taken a bit of a drastic drop, which could then lead us a bit further into an overall new bias and a bit more of an understanding on what could be going on. Now, having a look at this, one of the first things that came to mind is the 17th of September today, and yesterday we were sitting at around 68.56%, and the day before that we were pretty much, and even the week before, sitting up around the 70% region. So to see BTC dominance right now at almost breaking back to 68% on the dot, it's a bit of a wake-up call that the BTC dominance and the surge that we've been covering, as you can see we're now on the BTC chart, having a look at this right now from a weekly perspective and what was covered in Wizard Wednesdays and the prior breakdown, nothing has necessarily changed on the BTC half. This candle here, although we have seen a lot of wick accumulation and body closures around $9,850 to around $9,800, this huge Fibonacci setup here still remains very valid. And we did see, after a rejection here, a candle closure and rejection here, and then the rejection and the candle closure here, we saw a huge sell-off occur on the weekly time frame. Now, seeing how the candle did close all the way back up, this is a very similar theory I showed you guys around the $14,000 region on the daily once upon a time before we reversed back. Now, many people do see this as a fairly bullish indicator. Now, looking at the current rejection of that support, which again is a very crucial support for us right now, this $10,000 region. As for BTC, this is so crucial that if it does break above and beyond, then that's almost 100% confirmed upside breakout. And if it breaks back below, then it will very easily gear us down into this $8,000 region. So it's a very critical level. But what's interesting me at the most right now is the fact that even though we are seeing these rejections and we have broken higher, we are not really breaking out to the upside just yet. And we are still maintaining. Again, this zone has been marked out pretty well for your convenience. And if I just drag this over here as well, you can see we've had all kinds of price action occurring within this specific boundary of give or take around $10,300 up to $10,420. So we're looking overall at around a $120 range, give or take, on a consistent basis, where price is just finding that stability and ground again and again. And not to mention how close it is to the $10,100, $10,000 zone, which is even more crucial. We're seeing a lot of tight price range constrictions within this area. So looking at this overall, this huge spike down for me isn't actually that bullish in my opinion. It's looking very bearish in terms of a huge amount of selling pressure here was able to stop a huge bullish candle, hold it in its tracks right here, and then the next weekly candle for an entire week slammed all the way down to this level before pulling up again. Now, if you understand the general rule of thumb and how this normally works out and equates in technical aspects, this for me shows a lot of selling pressure. And not just that, it shows me that price was pushed down unexpectedly after a huge bullish movement. And what it normally means from there is when the price gets pushed up by the end of the week, this is normally a point where the following week after, many traders who caught the initial short, or even worse, many bulls who were involved in this trade to the upside who then got slammed down, they have managed to drive price back up to where it reversed from. But what this normally means is, and it's normally a clear warning sign, that buyers are starting to get out of the market. For a huge bullish candle like this to be pushed all the way back down to its opening price, that's normally a sign that the bulls are losing their momentum, and a pushback higher upon the weekly candle closure normally indicates that this price has been driven higher so the bulls can get out of their positions at least at break even or at some form of profit before identifying there could be a major shift back down towards where this huge wick was left off. So this is a fairly large unfulfilled region for me right now, and it is a bit of a warning sign that price could actually depreciate further and aim to take out this region once again. Because it happened in such a fast pace as well and in such rapid succession, all I can really understand from here is a pullback this far normally leaves uncharted territory for price to come back and retest at some point in the future. So overall, we still have the 23rd of September for the back to launch as well. All of this is still aligning pretty well in my opinion, and not to mention when we did see this closure, the candle then pushed back up one last time and then slammed all the way down. So we've already seen that $10,100 region being met. So give or take, what that really provides for me in terms of understanding and analysis is that now that we've tapped this level, what this can really mean in particular is upon breaking this level and touching, this could be the final gateway to slam all the way down to the bottom here. Once this is fulfilled and once this is completed, then we could be seeing the final movement still completely in line with the 23rd of September. So it's all still looking pretty good from the BTC side. And now that we've seen the BTC dominance drop as well, it's just really starting to correlate back and forth with the huge possibility. Now we'll go over to Ether and XRP in a minute as well, but it's just really giving me that ideology that upon this closure down, and if we do see the BTC dominance drop and we see this level slam down, then if XRP and Ether can sustain, then this could very easily trigger an altcoin rally. So this is something we have to actually keep open now and into consideration, and it could really be a major turn of events if this continues. But for the time being, just looking at this on a weekly perspective, there is a trend line forming here. The trend line still hasn't been retested. We've got the daily over here as well. Broken, still hasn't been retested, and we are still consolidating around this region. So we did have the head and shoulders as well, the shoulders, and even a double shoulder, technically head shoulder reversing from this region. Now what that could essentially mean is, although we are holding this level and sustaining, it does look pretty promising for a bullish breakout. It could be very short-lived, and even if we do see some form of bullish momentum, then this could just drive us up towards around $10,600 before actually surging all the way back down. So not surging, actually melting back down to these lower spectrums. So let's go over to XRP and have a little look at what's going on the XRP side as well. Now, from a weekly perspective, what we're looking at here, well, if you actually take into consideration what's just happened, we did get hit a little bit unexpectedly by a fairly large upside breakout from the 0.265 region. Now that this region has fulfilled and now we've actually seen that breakout, this for me doesn't actually confirm there's an upside movement yet. Now, if you go to the 4 hour, for example, you can already see this level holding, but also looking from a 4 hour perspective, this would almost give us the idea that price is going to pull back and begin exploding to the upside. We've had trend line breaks, retests, we've seen it all. We managed to capture one of these as well. But overall, what's interesting for me is the weekly perspective over here right now. From a weekly perspective, guys, you have to realize, although we've seen this huge upside breakout, what you actually have to take into consideration is this huge zone here. One of the most crucial levels of support XRP it pretty much has ever seen. Looking at this level, it's failed to actually break properly. It's always been short term, and it's never managed to sustain over the long term. Now, following on from all these rejections, we finally broke through to absolute perfection. Remember, this was in line with our analysis as well. So all of this came through perfectly. We saw the reversal, and all we're seeing right now, especially from my perspective, I don't like to be the guy that provides all of the, I guess you could say, dampeners on the overall bullish euphoria, but it is a bit more of an insightful perspective and a bit more level-headed and logical when you consider that there's now a weekly trend line that we have to take into consideration. We have precisely tapped that 0.3 region, finally retesting the broken support term resistance. So I'm still actually identifying shorts on this particular setup, and when we go over to Ether in a second as well, which we'll look at a bit clearer, you can start to see a bit of a correlation between the trend lines and the overall key levels we're currently at. So again, if you actually wanted to consider the original trend line, which was broken, the last one, we've now actually retested. Again, it doesn't even need to be perfect. You've just seen already, we've broken through this trend line, retested here, retested our crucial zone. Again, we maybe should have been able to to identify this, but we were seeing a lot of weakness. So putting all this into perspective, there's a trend line retest here, potential trend line retest here alongside our zone holding. And if we do just whip up a Fibonacci on this particular setup as well, you can see the 61.8 has been met, and all of these targets here then suddenly align exactly with our key levels. Looking from the upside perspective as well, the 78.6, if this does come through and does unfold into a reality, then the 78.6 with the 0.312 region and the trend line, another perfect confluence on our hands. So we are still identifying shorts over here on XRP, and as you can see from that 4-hour candle, I wouldn't enter just yet, knowing that we do have around 1 hour 30 minutes till this candle closes, but also knowing there is a fairly large possibility of this trend line up here being met. So on the other end, whilst we are still targeting these exact same regions for the time being, this for now doesn't actually mean anything too threatening. And if you really want to, you can switch this from wick to wick over here as well and just make it a bit clearer on what's actually going on this end as well. So there is a bit of congestion around here, and overall this is a fairly good short zone. So you can take it two ways. If you really want to jump the gun, or if you want to be the person that at least takes that little bit of an extra risk, although not advisable, there is still a fairly good risk reward setup available on this pair. As long as we do remain for XRP below this wick and this wick congestion here, then it is still valid as a new lower high. So it's all forming pretty much into plan right now. This was unexpected, but we're still aligning with the overall setup. And this is something I've been trying to tell you guys on Twitter as well. When you do see a rather large upside breakout, do not feel threatened, do not feel scared. Always look at the bigger time frames, because that's how you can easily identify what may be going on for the bigger picture. Now, as I said, even looking at the short terms on BTC or any other pairs, this can be quite choppy, especially during these quiet periods in the market. Many of us have just been sitting there idle, waiting for the price to break out. And it's only when you focus on the longer term picture, you can actually start to disregard all of this movement and start to identify how it could just be manipulative price being driven towards a certain region before fulfilling the next target. So as covered on Twitter as well, no need to stress, nothing to actually worry about. It's all working to plan. And overall, we have some nice confluences up here as well. So if you wanted to enter maybe 20 to 30% of a position here, and then await a potential pullback higher up to this region here with the 78.6, you would have a much larger and higher probability Fibonacci setup as well. And again, as long as it remains below this region, and the stop losses can be placed just above as well. Nice, fairly good risk to reward of 5.68% on a ratio perspective for that setup as well. So just a little update on this. XRP looking pretty good, 4-hour time frame. The 1 hour is already holding quite nicely, so we could even see, looking at this 1 hour time frame, all you would need is a break below this box around here. Break, potential retest, you could enter there as well. There are many different setups unfolding on XRP, but we have seen 4 candles overall so far just rejects this region exactly here. Let me just drag this up a little higher for now as well, just to show you what's going on. You can see a nice rejection overall, 3 wicks, 1, 2, 3 descending on a trend line perspective on an intraday level as well. So overall, everything's aligning. It's looking pretty good to me, and it is looking pretty positive. And if I quickly switch over to Ether, just to show you what's going on from this perspective, but again, weekly as well, just one final time, we have seen this many times over, guys. Huge green candles followed by very rapid, sharp declines to the downside. Even if it's just another move down to even 26 cents or down to around 24 to 23 cents, then by all means, this could be another phenomenal trade on our hands. And as you can see, it is now rejecting that zone again. And this is the cruciality of those key levels. So going over to Ether, just having a look at this as well. Here is why. If you look at the XRP chart where we had a little bit of room to push up to that other trend line, which was going down this way, then what you could potentially see going on here is a trend line break, counter trend breakthrough, and a potential retest of this region as well. Now, this for me is a very big wake up call, because although we have seen that counter trend line break, we are now seeing the retest, and this could very easily gear us up for the next leg lower. Initially, I was looking at XRP's movement as a sign that the altcoin rally could begin, but when you actually start to put this in perspective with all these other fundamentals on the altcoins, then this was simply a very overdue retracement. And unless we break above this trend line, then the overall market bias still remains bearish for the short term, in particular over the next few weeks. And then from moving on forward from backed, I do believe the market could be manipulated. Now, considering backed is only several days away now, it's only 6 days away from actually launching, then looking at what could be unfolding within this period, you realize the market could be very short-term rallying. So these potential market manipulators using futures, or whether that's CME futures or backed, they could be gearing up for a short-term rally, retesting these regions before absolutely dumping this market before the final launch. So looking at these fib levels, counter trend, and the Fibonacci targets, it actually aligns with the lower spectrum of this trend line here. Almost perfectly, we have that correlation as well. And then combining that with XRP, you can see overall in the longer term picture perspective, this is looking pretty promising for a short-term movement higher and then a slow descent to the downside. And then from there, if we do see this fulfill as well, this would obviously aid the XRP 23 to 20 cents bias. And then from there, nice ground found. I cannot see this Ether trend line breaking. This has become almost like gospel. And with this trend line holding, this just gives us more confirmation. If we do drive down to this level, this will be one of the final levels we reach for Ether before the bull run actually commences. And then obviously, understandably, this is where the real rally and upside breakout would begin. So if we were to get rid of this trend line, we were to get rid of this Fibonacci, then by all means, it would look extremely bullish. You can see there's a huge amount of momentum. We have technically broken a very steep and sharp trend line, but there are much larger and more predominant key levels in play. So knowing all of these levels are being taken into consideration and knowing there's so many solid levels of support and resistance, and not just that, if I just quickly drag that there, and then drag this down to there, duplicate this very quickly, what you can see from here is a perfect inverse correlation. So you can see a perfect distance from here, drag this down, we have a perfect level of support and resistance around $175 to around $165. As you can see prior, this was resistance, then support, then resistance, resistance, support, support. So we have many key levels to hang from. And although we've broken and retested, this could be one of those final regions that causes consolidation before absolutely exploding higher. So just wanted to give you another update. Again, it's Wizard Wednesdays tomorrow as well, so we'll go into this in even more depth. But just wanted to keep you guys in the loop. We've seen a bit of movement today at last, so it's only right I stay on top of the market analysis as well. So guys, see you in the Telegram shortly and Twitter as well.